It seems like the trial is just as crazy as I would envision, because everything that happened before the trial surrounding the family was pretty wild as well. You guys don't know, Alex Murdaugh and his family, they're really well known in South Carolina. They're a very prominent family. They have a legacy of people in their family that were lawyers spanning over 100+ years, and they're really well-known people. So for this to happen in South Carolina, I don't know, I think they live in a pretty sort of small town as well. So things are going down. It is crazy, and more people are involved, and they're starting to reinvestigate certain deaths that happened in the past. And yeah, I don't know, a lot of it's gonna be unveiled during this trial. I'm pretty sure they're not gonna have Alex Murdaugh on the stand. I'm pretty sure that guy's gonna be he ain't taking the stand, man. The murders happened back in, I want to say 2021, so it's been about a year and a half. Alex Murdaugh is accused of murdering his wife, Maggie Murdaugh, and his younger son, Paul Murdaugh, who's 22 years old at the time. Very, very young. Now, the interesting thing about this family is that they're also involved in other things as well. For example, Paul Murdaugh, 2 years before the murder, or maybe a year or two before the murder, he was actually involved in a drunk boating incident where him and his friends, were out boating. They were drunk as heck, and around 2 a.m. they crashed into a bridge. And he was driving this thing, or not driving. He was, what do you call it? Sailing this thing? What do you call boating? Driving? I can say driving, right? He was driving this thing. Yeah, whatever. Oh, it's Murdaugh. One of the younger ladies that were on there actually died. So what happened was they crashed into the bridge. I think most of the passengers flew off into the waters, and they were unable to recover Mallory Beach. They were unable to recover her body at the scene. However, her body did end up washing up on shore 7 days later. But the thing with the there were some weird things that were happening with this investigation, because people were kind of they're giving cops shit for maybe possibly being lenient on this case, because the family was so prominent in that area. Like I said, this family has a whole generations of lawyers. They're very prominent, spanning over more than 100 years. And it's sometimes rich people, sometimes they get away with some shit, because they have connections and stuff like that. However, I mean, he was being charged though. Should acknowledge just to correct with the last name and went right back to Murdaugh. Did I? Not only is he accused of murdering his wife and his son, there's also a lot of things that were happening around him. So, for example, he's been charged with over 100 other things. There's something about property fraud, computer fraud, money laundering, and some other nonsense mess. And also his previous law firm that he was actually a partner at, that his family built, that law firm is suing him because he's been accused of taking settlement money. So he's basically a lawyer that represents people for wrongful death lawsuits. And what he's been doing is he's just been stealing the money of the settlement and not giving it out to the family. So what does that remind you of? I don't know if you guys watch The Real Housewives, but one of the Real Housewives, Erica Girardi, her husband is also a very prominent lawyer as well. And well, his empire pretty much came crashing down because he was also accused of taking settlement money from victims that he was representing. And that's a whole other nonsense. Additionally, 2 months after the murders of his wife and his son, Alex Murdaugh was shot in the head. And then when you hear, oh my God, this guy was shot in the head, how is he alive? This is crazy. Well, he said that he survived, obviously, because, he's going in trial right now. But Mr. Murdaugh said that he pulled his vehicle on the side of the road because there were some car issues. He noticed there was a car driving past by him, made a U-turn, came back, and then decided to shoot at him. And so he did sustain injuries, but it was very, when you hear a shot in the head, you think that oh my God, you're probably dead. But he actually only had light injuries. It was nothing crazy or anything like that. I think a couple days after that, he confessed and actually said, well, the original story that I gave you, well, that didn't really happen. What happened was I hired my long distance cousin / drug dealer / mechanic to come assassinate me on the side of the road just so I can have my son, the older son, Buster, collect insurance money of I don't know, $10 to $20 million or something. So that's also another thing that he's involved with. It's just I remember when this was happening a couple months back, it was you hear about the murders, and you hear about the prominent family, and then you hear about, the son was involved in another incident. And then you hear about Alex Murdaugh, being involved in this other thing as well, where he's trying trying to hire a hitman to kill him so he can get the insurance money. Like, I don't know. There's just a lot of really crazy things happening with his family. And right now, he's in trial. So I wanted to watch the opening statements. We're going to hear from his lawyer, and then we're going to hear from the prosecutors as well. Or, did I say prosecutors? Prosecutor as well.
On the evening of June 7th, 2021, at the defendant's property off Moses.
Wait, is it me, or it sounds like there's like ominous music playing in the background? Or maybe it's like picking up some weird feedback or something.
Hill Road in Colleton County. His son, Paul Murdaugh, was standing in a small feed room in some kennels they had on the property. About 8:50 p.m., and the defendant over there, Alex Murdaugh, took a 12-gauge shotgun and shot him in the shoulder, in the chest and the shoulder, with buckshot. And the evidence is going to show it was a 1,000,000 to 1 shot. He could have survived that, but after that, another shot went up under his head and did catastrophic damage to his brain and his head. The evidence is going to show that Paul collapsed right outside that feed room.
He didn't have time to react, man.
Just moments later, he picked up a .300 Blackout, which is a type of ammunition, but an AR-style rifle, and the evidence is going to show that the family had multiple weapons throughout the property. Picked up that .300 Blackout rifle and opened fire on his wife, Maggie, just feet away near some sheds that used to be a hangar. Pow, pow. 2 shots, abdomen in the leg, and took her down. And after that, there were additional shots, including 2 shots to the head that, again, did catastrophic damage.
Jesus.
Killed.
So, again, shotgun to the son, and then AR-style rifle to the wife. Now, do you guys think that he used 2 different guns because he wanted to make it look like it was like 2 different intruders that came on the property?
Her instantly. The evidence is going to show that neither Paul nor Maggie had any defensive wounds.
Mm-hmm.
Neither one of them had any defensive wounds, as if they didn't see a threat coming from their attacker. And the evidence is also going to show that both Maggie and Paul were shot at extremely close range. The evidence is going to show it's called stiffening. It's almost like a tattoo, that when you get shot very close to a weapon, it leaves marks that the forensic pathologist can see. They were shot at close range and they did not have defensive wounds. And the evidence is going to show that the defendant, Alex Murdaugh over there, told anyone who would listen that he was never at those kennels. But the evidence is also going to show from these things that every one of us, most of us carry around in our pocket, that he was there. And he was there just minutes before, with Maggie and Paul, just minutes before their cell phones go silent forever and ever.
So Alex Murdaugh maintains that he was not at the kennel area, but he was actually checking up on his mother, who was suffering from maybe like Alzheimer's, I think.
Despite what he told people, I was never at the kennels, the cell phones are going to show otherwise.
Mm.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Creighton Waters. I'm with the Attorney General's office, and I'll be the lead prosecutor. I introduced myself before.
Hi, Creighton.
With me is David Fernandez, Savannah Gow, John Metters, Don Zelinka, John Conrad, and Johnny James. A lot of lawyers. This is a big case. It's a very complicated case, and that's why there's so many people working on it. Sitting back in the row, we have David Owen, who's the lead investigator. We have Lieutenant Charles Gent, who's one of the agents, Special Agent Ryan Kelly, and Special Agent Peter Rudolphy. Some of the agents that are working on the case, as well as Investigator Isaac Toledo, who's working on the case as well. There's some of the witnesses that you'll hear from as we go through this case. The judge talked to you a little bit about him being the judge of the law, and he gives you the law. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the legal concepts before I turn back to those facts. Just remember, though, he's the judge of the law, so you take what he says, but I'm going to explain to you some of the legal issues from my perspective before we talk a little bit more about the evidence in the case.
So here's the picture of the kennel area. So it's where, like, I think that maybe like the dogs or the animals were, and like Paul was like where like the feeding room was, where I guess they had all the food. So there's like the kennel area right here. Here's like the rooms. I'm trying to zoom in a little bit. Can't really see too much. Leftover blood right there. Just pictures of like the splatters and stuff like that. And they did make this diagram right here, which it's a little bit blurry. I wonder if I could find one that's like a lot more clear. But this is where Paul Murdaugh's body was found. And this is where Maggie Murdaugh's body was found. So we have the dog kennels here, and then you got the storage room here where the feed was. So this is what the crime scene would have looked like.
And the first thing is right before you went to lunch, y'all all took an oath. Everybody in this courtroom who's got involvement in this case takes an oath. You know, attorneys take an oath to become an attorney, take another oath to become a prosecutor, judge takes another oath to become a judge, witnesses take an oath on the stands, law enforcement take oaths to become law enforcement, but y'all took an oath as well. And the reason why is that y'all have the most important job in this court. Every one of you raised your hand and said that you would well and truly try this case. And it's the most important job here because like the judge said, he's the judge of the law, but y'all are the judge of the facts. Y'all are going to listen to what comes from that witness stand and judge those facts. But you also have to be mindful of that oath. That oath requires you to do that hard job, to make that decision, to call the strike when you see it. It's the same oath. It's just as important as any other oath.
Man, I feel like the audio fluctuates a lot from being low and being really loud. So you know what? I'll keep it a little bit maybe on the loud side, or...
The most important in this court.
I don't,
Judgment and
Food.
reasonable doubt.
I'm glad that it's been quiet on her end.
The state's burden to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. That is a cornerstone of our country. I wouldn't have it any other way. It's a burden to be welcomed. It's what we want. It's a system that has been well tested and true, and we take that burden to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. And I want to remind everyone that the emphasis is on reasonable. Okay, it's not any doubt. It is reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt is often defined, again, listen to the judge how he defines it, but reasonable doubt is a doubt that would cause a reasonable person to hesitate to act. And when you hear the evidence coming from this stand about this particular case, I submit to you, you won't hesitate to act. Again, remember the emphasis is on the reasonable doubt. The judge mentioned the charges, and there are 4 of them. First indictment accuses Alex Murdaugh, to which he's pled not guilty, but it accuses him of murdering Maggie Murdaugh.
His wife.
Second indictment accuses him of murdering Paul Murdaugh.
Youngest son, 22 at the time.
The third indictment accuses him of possessing a firearm during the commission of a violent crime, that being the murder of Maggie Murdaugh. And the last one accuses him of possessing a firearm during the commission of a violent crime, and that being the murder of Paul Murdaugh. And what does that mean? What is murder? Well, the judge again is going to instruct you. It is the unlawful killing of another with malice aforethought.
Ooh, look at
What
that
is
zoom in.
malice? Malice is a mental state. That's ultimately going to be for y'all to determine as to what was going through Alex Murdaugh's mind when he committed these crimes. What is malice? Malice has often been defined as the intentional doing of a wrongful act without just cause or excuse.
I mean, do you think he was trying to stage the murders as if it was like an intruder, and he was trying to collect the life insurance money on both of them? Because at this time, he was taking a lot of heat for all the fraud that he was involved in. I think on the same day the murder happened, he was cornered by someone. Maybe it was someone from his law firm or something like that. But they said that like he stole like maybe like, I don't know, like more than like $500,000 from them, and a bunch of other crazy shit that he did. So do you think he was trying to collect insurance money so he can like get out of debt free, or you think he just panicked and he's like, you know what, fuck this, I'm just gonna get, I don't know, maybe he wanted to do like a murder suicide type of thing? Because the funny thing was, like, well, not funny, but the crazy thing was, like 2 months afterwards, he tried to stage his own murder so his son can have the insurance money from it. So it's like, I don't know, man. We're seeing some resemblances here. Oh, or wanted sympathy. Yeah, maybe wanted sympathy. And so he could be like, you know what? Like my family, you know, just all got murdered. Like, please don't come after me.
It is the intent to inflict an injury under circumstances that the law would presume an evil intent, and defined as the intentional doing of a wrongful act without just cause or excuse. It is the intent to inflict an injury under circumstances that the law would presume an evil intent. An evil intent. And when you look at the circumstances of the crime, when you look at what led up to this crime, the evidence is going to show that there was malice aforethought. Aforethought, what does that mean? It means it has to exist at the moment you commit that crime. It doesn't have to be planned. It doesn't have to be planned for any long period of time. It just has to exist a split second before the crime is committed. But when you see this crime and you hear all the circumstances, the evidence is going to show that aforethought existed for a while.
I look either sleepy or bored. I'm trying to look into something that I said earlier to make sure I had it right. So I'm sifting through the articles right now. I think the old money family legacy is everything. Why would you kill your legacy? His son and wife, I don't know. I mean, his oldest son is still alive. Technically, could have carried on the legacy.
It existed for a while in the mind of Alex Murdaugh.
Sure doesn't want to anymore now, though.
You're also going to hear about circumstantial evidence. And a lot of times people hear, oh, it's just a circumstantial case. But the law says otherwise. The law says that circumstantial evidence is just as good as direct evidence. And what's the difference between the two? Direct evidence It's supposedly about a storm out here, from what I'm told. Direct evidence is if it's sunny outside, and a witness goes outside and it's sunny, and they come in here and they get on that witness stand, and because they saw it raining, they sit on the stand and said, I was just outside and I saw it raining. I saw it raining. That's direct evidence. They actually saw it raining. But to give you an example of what circumstantial evidence is if the witness goes into a room where all curtains are drawn, and when they go into that room, it's sunny outside and everything's dry. And while they're in that room, they see it darken behind the shades, they hear thunder, they hear the wind blowing, they hear the sound of raindrops on the roof, and then they open up the door, and it's not raining, but everything is wet. There's puddles in the driveway, there's puddles in the street, there's puddles in the yard, there's limbs down all over the ground. And then they come in here and say, yeah, it was raining. Didn't actually see it raining, but those circumstances are beyond any reasonable doubt that it was actually raining. Now, I guess it's possible that somebody could have been standing outside the window and beating the drum to sound like thunder and blowing a fan to make it seem like it was the wind and somehow got enough water.
Wait, what's going on with the rain now? I'm a little bit confused about the rain. He only cares for himself. That's why. It's a focus face. If it looks like a duck, it sounds like a duck.
To coat the entire neighborhood, but that's not reasonable. Everybody understand that distinction?
Oh, okay. He's just explaining reasonable doubt, I guess. Okay. Because there was something about the crime scene, about the water and the puddles and stuff like that. So I thought that's what it was referencing to.
Another thing, and this is crucial, what you're going to do in this particular case, is determine credibility or the believability of witnesses. So it'll be your job to look at the evidence, the exhibits in the case, but also the witnesses and decide if it's truthful, if you believe it, if you can rely on it. And the judge is going to instruct you that you can believe one witness against many or many witnesses against one. You can believe all the witnesses' testimony or part of the witnesses' testimony. It's up to you, first individually and then as a product of your deliberations. And what you're required to do there is just to rely on that good old-fashioned common sense. Does it all fit together? Is it corroborated? Does it fit with what you would expect? Does it fit with what you expect how real people would act? Does it seem real? Or does something seem a little off? Does something seem a little off? You're going to see video statements of Alex Murdaugh. You're going to see body-worn camera of him at the scene when law enforcement arrives. And hear what he says. And hear what he says about that night. You're going to hear 3 recorded statements on video that he gave with law enforcement, and you're going to hear how things progress about what he says and what he says he did that night. Watch those closely. Watch his expressions. Listen to what he's saying. Listen to what he's not saying.
They have a lot of police footage on him. I think at some point they released the entire police footage unredacted. Well, except for like showing anything like Grizzly, of course. But yeah.
Use that common sense. Does this seem right? Or does something seem a little off? Something seems a little off. I mentioned that Maggie was killed with a .300 blackout rifle, an AR-style rifle that chambered in .300 blackout ammunition. And you're going to hear evidence that back in Christmas of 2016, Alex Murdaugh over there bought 2 .300 blackout AR-style rifles. And then not long after that, one of them went missing from Paul's truck. And time went by, and in April of 2018, Alex Murdaugh replaced that rifle and bought another one. 3 total blackout rifles that they had. One of them went missing years ago, and a replacement was bought. You're going to hear evidence that Paul and his friend were using that replacement gun. They were standing right outside the side door to the gun room of the house, and they were sighting it in, firing down into a field. And the cases were ejecting. The cases are the empty shell from a bullet, and they were ejecting out into the flower bed right there. And then there's a range across the street, and they shot it there, and there's cases ejected there as well. And they were shooting that 3rd replacement gun just weeks prior to the murders, prior to June 7th, 2021, when Maggie and Paul were murdered. And you're going to hear forensic evidence that the cases that were found in that flower bed and the cases that were found across the street at that range were ejected out of the same weapon that fired all the cases that were around Maggie's dead body, that killed her. It was a family weapon that killed Maggie Murdaugh. And you're going to hear evidence that of those 3 blackouts that Alex Murdaugh purchased, when law enforcement arrives at the scene on June 7th, 2021, he can only account for one of them. He can only account for one of them. And that replacement gun is nowhere to be found. You're also going to hear evidence that the type of ammunition the exact brand, the exact model of ammunition that was used to kill Maggie, S&B, 300 blackout ammunition, and 147 grain bullets. That exact ammunition, boxes, empty boxes of that ammunition, is found all over the property. The very same brand and model of ammunition that was used to kill her is found at multiple locations throughout the property.
I love how passionate he is because it's so easy for people on the jury to kind of just be a little bit like, okay, this is boring. Like, I'm going to go to sleep. So I feel like if you have someone that's like really passionate and kind of like, you know, switches up their cadence a little bit when they talk, then it makes you want to pay attention more because you're like, oh, dude, what's going on here?
And you're also going to hear evidence, the same thing about the shotgun shells that killed Paul. That federal double-aught buckshot unfired rounds were found on the property, as well as Winchester #2 turkey legs, the 2 rounds in the shotgun that killed Paul. Family weapon, same ammunition. It's on the property. You're also going to hear evidence that about a week after the murders, Mr. Alex Murdaugh's father had died, Mr. Randolph, and about a week after the murders, he shows up early in the morning.
I can't imagine the amount of anxiety he must have.
His parents' home, where his mother still is.
Oh, I don't know why that didn't pause. I can't imagine what the amount of anxiety he must have sitting there, guilty or not. Oh, Alex Murdaugh.
Shows up early in the morning. His father had died, Mr. Randolph, and about a week after the murders, he shows up early in the morning at his parents' home, where his mother still is in late-stage Alzheimer's. Alameda in Hampton. It's uncharacteristic for him to show up early, uncharacteristic for him to show up at all like that. And he comes in, and he's carrying something in a blue tarp, and he takes it upstairs.
Wait, what was in a blue tarp?
Eventually, law enforcement finds out about that, and they go upstairs, and they find a wadded up, very, very large raincoat in a blue color that looked like a tarp. And you're going to hear evidence that it was coated with gunshot residue on the inside.
Oh, snap. Oh, man, I don't know. Look at the defense attorney. They're looking kind of confused right now. Like, oh, shit, do you know they had that? I don't know, man. I didn't know they had that. Did you? Let's replay that really quick. Look at this guy. Like, oh, shit.
You're going to hear other evidence of gunshot residue. You're going to hear that there was gunshot residue on Alex at the scene. You're going to hear the evidence that there was gunshot residue on the seatbelt of the car he was driving. You're going to hear evidence that when law enforcement got to the scene, he had gone and gotten a shotgun, Paul's shotgun, and that Maggie's DNA was on that shotgun. You're going to hear other evidence from DNA, gunshot residue, firearms examiners. There's going to be a lot of forensic evidence in this case. And I'm not going to get into every single bit of it right now, but I will say that a key piece of forensic evidence that you're going to hear in this case is the cell phone note. Alex's cell phone, Maggie's cell phone, Paul's cell phone. You know, this is all amazing technology that most of us carry around in our pockets. It really allows us to do a lot of things and to get a lot done. But this cell phone keeps track of who we're talking to, who we're calling, who we're texting, whenever we access apps. And every time you do that, there's a record kept in this phone unless it's deleted somehow. And if you're using certain apps, you can even get GPS information, where you were when you did that, that's stored on these phones. You're going to hear evidence about that. You're going to hear evidence that when you make a call and it pings off the cell towers, the location information can be gathered from that as well.
This is what they have on Maggie Murdaugh's phone activity. So they think the murders happened between what's like 8:50 to 9 something p.m. So 8:17 p.m. phone was unplugged from a charger. By the way, I didn't know that you can get this detailed with the oh crap, let me go back. I didn't know you can get this detailed with the phone information. So 8:17 phone was unplugged from the charger. 8:30 Poshmark.com website running in the back. What the heck is going on here? Stop. Poshmark.com website running in the background. If you guys don't know what Poshmark is, it's like where people sell their like resell their high-end luxury stuff, or you could buy like used stuff on there as well. 8:49 p.m. display on. 8:49 phone unlocked. 8:49 group text from John read. 8:49 device unlocked. And I think it was between, oh here it is. Prosecution theory, Maggie was killed between 8:49 and 9:04 p.m.
And so it allows an investigation to take this and piece together what someone was doing on a particular day, and not only what they were doing, but who they were interacting with and how they were interacting with. This is going to be crucial evidence for you to consider. You're going to hear that particularly Alec and Paul, but also Maggie, were prolific cell phone users, to the point where Paul's friends even had a nickname for him about his cell phone usage. Before I talk more about that, there's 3 family properties I need to talk about. Okay. The first one I've mentioned is Moselle. Moselle in Colleton County. It's called Moselle. It's off of Moselle Road, but everybody refers to it as Moselle. And that property is this is a lot of acres. There's a main house on it, and there's a driveway that goes to that main house. But it used to be an airstrip, and there's an airstrip that goes down, and then down the way, just less than a third of a mile away, just a 3-minute walk, 4-minute walk, 45-second drive, is the kennels and the shed that used to be a hangar where Paul and Maggie were murdered. So the main house is just less than a third of a mile away. You can see the kennels from the main house. You can see the main house from the kennels. The family also
And this property is like huge.
had a house
Oh god, I don't know what's wrong with my stuff. Okay, this property is like huge. It's like I think like 1,770 acre. It's like a hunting lodge.
And the evidence is going to show that that is where Maggie preferred to stay, particularly in the summer months. She liked the beach. She was not a hunter. She didn't want to be at Moselle. She didn't want to be at the lodge where it was hot and buggy. She liked being in Edison. And then you're also, I've already mentioned, the house in Alameda, which is where his parents' home. On June 7th, 2021, you're going to hear evidence that his father went.
Now I want to know, because he said that like during the time of the murder, he was actually at his mom's house. I wonder how far is the mom's house from the property that the murders took place?
Into the hospital, and the prognosis was not good. And in fact, he died a few days later. And his mother is in late-stage Alzheimer's, and that house being cared for by a caretaker. You're going to hear from that caretaker.
Mr. Forrest,
Yes, sir.
let me pause for a moment. We'll be at ease for just a moment.
Yes, sir. Your Honor.
Oh, pausing. Okay. I'm trying to find what happened to him right before the murders happened, like that same day. God, I'm trying to get like the exact statement. So that same day where the murders took place, I think he was confronted by one of his colleagues or something about like some money that was like missing. And it was like over $500,000, something like that. I just want to have the exact, I want to have correct, but I can't find where it is in the article. We're taking a little breaky right now. I'm going to forward through this. Wow, they could really tell your whole life story with just knowing the time you unlocked your phone. Yeah, I had no idea that data was available. Like unlock phone. Well, maybe, but like, because you would put in your password in, right? But like when it was charged and stuff like that. I mean, that's good, I guess. Have all the information out there.
But the kennels also have a driveway. And the evidence is going to show that that was actually as commonly used as the main driveway. In fact, the mailbox is by the kennel driveway. Driving right past those kennels were Paul and Maggie were murdered. I told you that you're going to hear evidence that Maggie did not like being in Moselle as much as she liked Edison, the beach house. But that, on June 7th, 2021, she came back to Moselle. And the evidence is going to show that she arrived about 8:15. And the evidence is going to show that from the cell phones that Paul was there at the house, at the main house. And Alex Murdaugh himself says that they ate dinner. And the autopsy is going to reflect both Paul and Maggie having similar stomach contents, indicating that they recently shared a meal together. About 8:30, about 15 minutes after they arrived, Paul's phone starts moving towards the kennels.
So they actually have the Snapchat. They contacted Snapchat and they were able to get a Snapchat representative to testify at the trial as well. So Paul Murdaugh, the younger son who was murdered, he actually did like a Snapchat that night. And in the Snapchat, people were saying that like you can hear Alex Murdaugh in the background because he said he was like around in the property or something like that. But God, I haven't listened to the video yet, but like people were like debating on the internet whether or not it sounded like it was Alex Murdaugh in the background or not. Somewhere I should have it here too.
The
Pull it up.
said he was never at those kennels, that he was napping after they ate, and he was at the main house and never went there.
But
We're also going to hear evidence about how much Alex uses him.
oh, here it is. Okay, I'm gonna show this to you guys really quick. This is the raw video file. I think it's very clear. There are 2 male voices plus 1 female. Pause video. Here's a 50-second video Paul Murdaugh recorded on his phone at 8:44 p.m. the night of the murders. There are 3 voices you can hear. Prosecutor says Alex Murdaugh, Paul, and Maggie. Alex says he wasn't there. ... Murders happened minutes later.
Get back. Get back. Quit, Cash. Come. Quit. It's okay. Come here. It's not bad. Come here, Cash. Shit.
Yeah, I hear another voice there.
Post it. Cash.
Hey, he's got a bird in his mouth.
Sounds like mom. Okay.
Hey, Bubba. This is a chicken.
Come here, Bubba.
Come here, Cash.
Come here, Bubba.
Cash. Quit.
Oh my God. Is that his voice in the background and he didn't realize that his son was making a Snapchat? Yeah, it definitely sounds like there's 3 people there. What do you guys think?
Cell phone. It would be unusual for him to be anywhere without a cell phone. At 8:44 and 55 seconds, Paul recorded a video. He was down at the kennels because he had been talking to a friend of his. You're going to hear from this friend because his friend's dog was in the kennels and they thought there was something wrong with the tail.
Oh, okay.
Recording a video of it to send to his friend. 8:44 and 55 seconds. And on that video, and you'll see that video, and you'll hear from witnesses that identify Paul's voice, Maggie's voice, and Alex's voice. Told anyone who would listen he was never there. At 8:44 and 55 seconds, there's a video. The evidence will show that he was there. He was at the murder scene with the 2 victims. And more than that,
Damn.
just over 3 minutes later, 8:49 and 1 second, Paul's phone locks forever. He never reads another text. He never sends another text.
I wonder where the phone was found. Was it actually found on his body? Because the weird thing was Maggie's phone, so the one that I read the history of earlier, Maggie's phone was actually found, I think, the next day on the side of the road somewhere. Like, it wasn't even found on her. So I wonder if the same thing happened to Paul's phone.
He doesn't answer calls. 3 minutes after that video has the defendant at the murder scene with the 2 victims, Paul's flip phone goes silent forever. And in fact, another communication comes into the very friend that he was talking to the dog at 8:49 and 35 seconds, just 35 seconds later, and he doesn't answer. He never answers another thing forever now.
Jeez.
On top of that,
Oh, there's a lot of whispering going on behind there.
Maggie's phone locks at 8.
Damn, he's turning real red.
31 seconds around that same time,
Oh,
and
geez.
she never
Looks furious.
answers another text, never sends another text, never makes another phone call, never receives another phone call. 3 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. 3 minutes after a video shows he's at the scene with the victims, and he told everybody he was never there. Credibility, ladies and gentlemen. Credibility. So what happens after that? Well,
Yeah, I want to know how the defense is going to explain that away. What are they going to say about that? Oh, that's not his voice. No way. That sounds like it's maybe one of the dogs or something.
you'll hear evidence that Alex's phone was conspicuously, he didn't have a lot of activity from about 8:09 p.m. until 9:02 p.m. And if he was at the kennels, which the evidence will show, why is his phone not with him? Why is it not
Oh.
But you will hear that at
Convenient,
9:02,
huh?
all of a sudden his phone does start to pick up activity. At 9:02, he calls, he starts moving. At 9:04, he calls Maggie's phone. Doesn't answer, of course. Doesn't answer. He calls his father, Randolph, who's in the hospital. Doesn't appear there's an answer there. He calls Maggie again at 9:06. Remember, he's just a third of a mile away. You can see it. At 9:06, she doesn't answer. At 9:06, he turns on his car, his Suburban.
Yeah, you're right about that for sentencing. Okay, cool. Thank you.
And he texts Maggie that he's going, be right back. I'm going to go check on Mom. And he doesn't drive down to the kennels, even though that's where the mailbox is. That's a common place to be, even though you can see it. He's called his wife 2 times and texted her, and she hasn't responded. But he doesn't just drive down there and say, hey, I'm heading. You guys want to go? What's up? What's up? Right there. You can see it. He then drives to Alameda, where his mom is suffering from Alzheimer's, and the caretaker is there. And he starts calling people. He's talking to people. It'll be up to you to decide whether or not he's trying to manufacture an alibi. He gets there to Alameda. You'll hear evidence about whether or not that was usual. You'll hear evidence about how he was acting when he got there. And he's only there for 20 minutes. because he's back underway at 9:44. And he makes more phone calls on the way back.
Yeah, so he's only there for 20 minutes, but apparently when I think his mother's caretaker testifies later on, she says that Alex Murdaugh pressured her to say that he was there for double the time, so like 30 to 40 minutes, not 20 minutes.
Calling friends, calling people who will answer. Be up to you to decide whether he's trying to create an alibi. And he gets back to Moselle at 10:01, and he calls 911 at 10:06. Listen to that 911 call. Listen to what he says. Listen to what explanations he may offer. You're going to hear that 911 call, but you're also going to see the body-worn camera of the officers who arrived at the scene. The video camera they wear, so it records what they're doing. And you're going to see what he did to Maggie and Paul. It's going to be gruesome. There's no other way around it. It's what he did. You're going to see crime scene photographs. You're going to see the traumatic injuries that were suffered. You're going to hear from a pathologist, a doctor who will examine the injuries. It's going to be gruesome. No other way around it. On that 911 call and on the body-worn cameras, pay attention to what he says. Look at how he's acting. But he says within a few minutes of each one of those, he says, this is about the boat case. This is about the boat case.
It says book case, but it's supposed to say boat case. So what it seems like he's trying to do, he's trying to say, oh, the reason why his son and his wife was murdered was because a couple years prior to that, his son was involved in, the boat accident where he was drunk and then one of his friends got launched out of the boat and she died. So I guess he's trying to say that like, oh, his son's been getting death threats and now they're actually getting his revenge on his family. But to the prosecutors and the police, maybe to them, it's like really shady. It's like, oh, why is he mentioning this like right now? But I mean, I get it both ways, I guess.
And you're going to hear some of what was going on in Alex Murdaugh's life leading up to that day. Stuff that happened that very day, stuff that was leading up, a perfect storm that was gathering, much like the storms that are coming outside today.
Yep, there's a lot
Listen
going
to that
on.
evidence. Listen to that gathering storm that all came to a head on June 7th, 2021, the day the evidence will show he killed Maggie and Paul. This has been a long, exhaustive investigation. It's going to be a fairly long trial because it's complicated. It's a journey. There's a lot of aspects to this case. There's a lot of factors to this case. But like a lot of things that are complicated, when you start to put them all together, piece them together like a puzzle, all of a sudden the picture emerges and it's really simple. It's really simple. Once we get to the end of that journey, and you have a chance to deliberate, the evidence is going to be such that you're going to reach the inescapable conclusion that Alec murdered Maggie and Paul, that he was the storm, that the storm was coming for them, and the storm arrived on June 7th, 2021, just like the storms that are heading here right now, that they died as a result, beyond any reasonable doubt. Thank you.
Damn, that's wild. What'd you guys think of his opening statement?
For the defense.
Good, straight to the point.
Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Dick Harpootlian. I think I introduced myself to you all and our attorneys, the three other attorneys, Jim Griffin, Philip Barber, Margaret Fox. It is our honor to represent Alex Murdaugh, or Murdaugh, depending on how you pronounce it. I say it's
See, he said Murdaugh too. It's not just me.
our honor because I submit to you what you have heard from the Attorney General as facts are not. They're his theories, his conjecture.
Okay.
Now stand up. This is Alex Murdaugh. And Alex was the loving father of Paul and the loving husband of Maggie. You're not going to hear a single witness say that their relationship, Maggie and
a little
Alex's
awkward.
relationship, was anything other than loving You're going to hear about how they went to a baseball game the weekend before. You're going to hear about their relationship.
I wonder if this was done on the fly or if he told Alex Murdaugh that, hey, you know, at some point in my speech, in my opening statement, I'm going to have you stand up. And I feel like Alex Murdaugh was like, okay, can I sit down now? Or how long should I be standing up for? It looks a little awkward.
You're going to see texts and emails indicating a loving relationship. Paul, the apple of his eye. You're going to see a video somewhere between 7:30 and 8 o'clock the night of the murders with Paul and Alex riding around looking at some trees they planted. It's a Snapchat that Paul sent to other people because the trees were not planted very well. They were cantilevering over. They're laughing. They're having a good time. That would be about an hour before the Attorney General says he slaughtered them. When I say he slaughtered them, but they were slaughtered, and no question. Paul Murdaugh was shot twice with buckshot, 12-gauge buckshot, once in the chest. And by the way, that shot would indicate it was in the chest and came out under his arm, like somebody that might have been holding up their hands. So when he says no defensive wounds, he perhaps was being held at shotgun. I mean, I can make the same sort of speculation that the Attorney General can, because that's all he's doing is speculating. What we do know is 12-gauge, fairly close range shot to the chest. He must have been turned because it comes out under his arm. There's wadding, if you're familiar with a shotgun, under his arm. The second shot ended up, and there's going to be some question about the direction of that shot, but ended up entering his skull cavity, and the gases from that shot literally exploded his head like a watermelon hit with a sledgehammer. All that was left was the front of his face. Everything else was gone. His brain exploded out of his head, hit the ceiling in the shed, and dropped to his feet.
Jesus.
Horrendous, horrible, butchering. So to find Alex Murdaugh guilty of murdering his son, you're going to have to accept that within an hour of having a extraordinarily bonding, you can see it in the Snapchat, that he executes him in a brutal fashion. Not believable.
I mean, I could still believe that, yeah. Depends on the person.
Not believable. Now, Maggie is shot running. There's no defensive wounds because she's shot running, and after she falls to the ground and had one bullet that has hit her and probably traveled up and hit her brain, she's on the ground, and whoever the perpetrator was walked up, took that AR, and put one in the back of her head.
Oh, in the back of her head.
Executed. Why? This is going to be interesting because we don't know why. He doesn't know why. He's got theories of this and theories of that. But why? Number one. Number two, what was it in that hour between when he's yucking it up with Paul? And let me say this to you. His record, he was interviewed. He comes home and finds, there's no question about this. They've got telemetry from his car. He left the house at 9:06, returns at 10:01 after seeing his mother who has dementia. Now remember, that day, his father, who's dying, is taken to the hospital. Mom's home alone with the housekeeper. Perfectly reasonable for him to want to go see her. And later than usual, because his father's not there. He's in the hospital. He dies 2 days later. His father dies 2 days later. So the question is, if he leaves at 9:06 and he's back at 10:01, he literally, I mean, and he can account, the cars and the cell phone records account for where he was between 9:06 and 10:01. Now the cell phone records, and you're going to hear this from their own experts, are incomplete. They're incomplete. And we're to submit one of the reasons they're incomplete. And by the way, how do they find Maggie's phone? Maggie's phone was thrown out on the side of the road about a quarter of a mile away from, a little bit more, maybe a half a mile, from the Moselle property. Thrown out.
I wonder if the phone was thrown on the side of the road, but was it like on the way to his like mom's house or something, or like somewhere near, you know?
On the side of the road. They found it by using Find My iPhone. And the way they did that, they had to open it or have access. Who gave them the code to open the phone? Now, Murdaugh.
Well, it would be a little bit fishy if he didn't, right? No? He had to.
And it's not destroyed, it's just thrown on the side of the phone. Mm-hmm. What you're also going to see is that Alex Murdaugh was calling that phone at 9:06. as he leaves the house, he did call her twice and texted her. And we also know that at 9:06, as he cranks his car,
It's also crazy to me that did they not have cameras on this property? Ain't got no cameras or anything like that? I don't know. Maybe it's just so safe that they don't need to have security or anything like that. I don't know. That's wild to me.
as the cell phone records show that, as the telemetry data shows the cell phone linking up with the car, that phone is being thrown on the side of the road almost a half a mile away. Now that is Houdini. That is magic. That is inexplicable. Now, I was making notes while the Attorney General was talking. But let me tell you what is more believable. The night he comes home and finds his wife and son butchered. And when I say butchered, you're going to see these photographs. When I see them now, after having seen them for the last 4 or 5 months, it still shocks me. It still is tough to look at. It still bothers me. And he comes home and finds his son laying in his own blood with his brain laying at his feet, shot to hell. He walks over, he checks to see if there's any life there, and although, I mean, he's seeing his brain laying outside his body, he knows there's nothing there. He goes over and tries to get a pulse out of Maggie. No pulse there. Calls 911. I want you to hear that 911 tape. It is a man hysterical, in grief, trying to figure out what's going on. And he tells the 911 operator that he's concerned, and he drives back up to the house. And by the way, you can't see, I've been out there, you can't see the shed where you might see the top of the shed. There are pine trees between the front porch or the porch on the house and the dog pens. And it's not a third of a mile, maybe by the way the crow flies, but it takes a little bit longer to drive down there. And this is not unusual for them to communicate by cell phone or text, even when they're all on the same property. It's 1,100 acres. Big property. They hunted it. So
I think
what I'm trying
1,700
to say to you
acres.
is that the Attorney General has given you his view. And again, you can't see the shed. And I'm going to ask the judge at some point during this trial to ask you, the jury, to be able to go to the scene so you can see it. You can understand the proportions. You can understand the details. Because the facts are what matter here. The facts. Let me give you another fact. You're going to hear their witnesses explain the catastrophic injuries to Paul. That his head literally exploded. And whoever shot him with that shotgun was probably no more than 3 feet away. Maybe closer, maybe a little further away. His head exploded. You would be covered in blood from head to foot. Head to foot. In blood. They seized his clothes that night. Sled did. And they test. Well, first of all, you're going to see in the videos from the officers that arrived that night, there's no blood on him. They didn't find any blood on him. Sled's testing indicated 12 different places on his shirt and pants. No human blood detected. Period. Okay?
Could he have changed
You'll
his
see
clothes?
pictures. A white T-shirt, no blood on it. Those are facts. Those aren't theories. Those are facts.
This T-shirt got tested, tested so many times that it actually ended up getting destroyed, and they weren't able to actually do any more testing on the shirt. It got fucked. Hi, Palermo.
Another fact that is, I think, the reason we're here today. When you hear those questions on the videotapes on the night, now he's found his wife and son brutally butchered. You can hear on the 911 tape, he is hysterical.
Wait, is he going to address the Snapchat though?
He comes in and out. It's consistent. If any of you have ever, you got to use your experience as part of this deliberation process. Your human experience. If you've ever suffered the catastrophic loss of a friend or a family member, it's numbing. The minute you find out, or if you see them dead, it's numbing. You go into shock. So anything he said that night is in the context of just an hour or two before finding his wife and son butchered. He drove back up to the house while he was on 911 saying, I got to get a gun. Whoever did this might be out there. And he gets a gun. What's fascinating about that is he gets a 12-gauge shotgun, and he grabs some shells. These people hunt a lot. They have guns everywhere. He grabs some shells. He puts a 12-gauge, grabs a 12-gauge shotgun, put a 12-gauge buckshot in, and then he put a 16-gauge buckshot in. That's how shook up he was. Guy hunted all his life, and he put a shell in that he couldn't fire a 16-gauge from a 12-gauge. Makes no sense. He was traumatized. GSR, their own expert at SLED said the amount of particles of GSR are consistent with him going up and picking that shotgun up. We want to talk about GSR? Again, if he fired a shotgun twice and a rifle 6 times, you'd be covered in GSR.
Or if you murdered your entire family, you could still be shook up and put in the wrong ammunition in.
Those are the facts. That's not his theory. The facts. Now let's talk a little bit about these ARs. Again, you're going to hear testimony. A lot of guns. They had a gun room. You know, I don't live in Calvin County. I live in downtown Columbia. Ain't no gun rooms in downtown Columbia. But apparently if you live on 1,100 acres, and you hunt deer, and you hunt whatever they were planting those sunflowers for, quail, I guess. You have a lot of guns. The truth is, in 2017, and you'll hear the testimony, that Alex bought 2 black ops, one for Paul and one for Buster, his other son, sitting out in the audience. And Paul had one his stolen. He bought another one for Paul. Now, Paul was very irresponsible with guns, cars. He'd leave guns around. He'd leave guns in cars. He oftentimes left guns
Why was he giving guns then if he's responsible with guns?
down at the dog pens in the feed room. Now, I can't tell you whether he was shot with his own weapon or not, or his
What?
son was shot with his weapon or not.
Wait, is that what they're trying to? Is that what they're trying to paint the picture? That maybe Paul shot himself with a shotgun, or?
But I can tell you
It's a weird subtle comment that he just made there.
that they weren't shot by Alex. They don't have the guns. There's no way to tell conclusively without having the weapons what weapons those were fired by, and we'll be talking a little bit with the SWAT experts about that. The sort of overarching issue here is why murder on June 7th, 2021, why is it September of 2022 before they charge him? And I will tell you what happened that night, and this is a problem.
Okay, what happened?
He's questioned, and the questioning is pretty aggressive. You'll hear it. He's traumatized. They suspect him. They show up, he's got a shotgun. They suspect him. And the next morning, 2 people found butchered, and here in Colleton County, Moselle Road. The police announced, don't worry, there's no danger to y'all. There's nobody out there that could pose a danger to you. Because you see, they decided that night he did it. Without forensics, without cell phones, without any of that. And they've been pounding that square peg in the round hole for the last, since June of 2021. Resulting in charges in September.
I haven't seen the body cam footages or anything like that or any interrogations yet, but I wonder, like, you know how sometimes you just have to, like, human intuition when you get to, like, when you meet someone, you can just tell there's something off about them or they're acting a little bit weird, or, like, 'cause these policemen, I mean, they've encountered so many murder scenes before, and I'm sure they've encountered a lot of different victims who act very differently, or, like, not victims, but, like, people who, like, had their entire family murdered and stuff like that. Like, I'm sure they react really differently and stuff like that. There's no perfect way to act, but I don't know, maybe there's just like an inkling that they had, just there's something off about this guy. Like, I don't know, man.
22. And so, if he felt, and he did, and you'll hear it, the accusatory fashion he's being interviewed in, he may not have dealt all the facts. But by the way, whether he'd been down to the dog pens that night or not, really doesn't matter.
Whether he was there or not, but y'all said he wasn't there.
Really doesn't matter. Because you're going to see cell phone activity that would be, let me put it this way.
What about the Snapchat?
Paul's phone, 850.
Okay.
Maggie's phone, later than that, 854, clearly.
Okay.
Still being used.
Okay.
At 9:06, he's up at the house, getting in the car, cranking it up to drive over and see his mom. He says
Okay.
a few hundred yards away, it's a little bit further than that. But the point of the matter is, he would have had to have executed both of them.
I guess how far is the kennel from the main house or the driveway or the car?
Got back up to the house, got the bloody clothes off.
Okay.
By the way, they seized his clothes from that night. They've never searched his house for any other clothes that we know of. Although that night, he gave permission and they got a search warrant. Go to my house. Go look through everything. Where are the bloody clothes? Where are the bloody clothes?
We don't know because, he left the house at 9:06, right? And then he came back an hour later, called the cops then. So he could have had a whole hour to discard them on the way somewhere. I don't know.
And of course, I would tell you that they've woven this story together because they want everything to be consistent. What's important about that is the judge, and by the way, there's no eyewitness. There's no forensics tying him to the murder. When I say forensics, fingerprints, blood, whatever, tying him to shooting anybody that night.
Okay.
The cell phone records would indicate he would have had less than 10 minutes to kill him, get up to the house.
I mean, is it possible that he may have used his wife's phone? God, what was she doing on the phone again? Is it possible that he could have just used the wife's phone? I mean, I'm sure they know each other's password, right? 8:49, device locked. I don't know if that's like a definite timeline. Okay.
Get in the car and crank it up. He'd be covered in blood.
He was naked. Hey, Clark.
Now, if they think he was beginning to establish an alibi, there's no evidence of that. The evidence is consistent with him seeing them earlier at the dog pen. And by the way, that audio they have of him and Maggie, they were talking about one of the dogs killing a chicken.
Okay.
And they were debating whether it was a guinea hen or a chicken.
Okay.
No animosity. Very normal discussion.
Wait, so he was there at the kennel? First you said it doesn't matter if he was there or not. I could have sworn they maintained that he was not there anywhere near close to the kennel. Like the guy was napping or something. He was at the house and then he decided to go to his mom's house afterwards. Let's rewind that a little bit.
Of him and Maggie, they were talking about one of the dogs.
Oh, so now they're admitting that he was there on the Snapchat. Okay.
Killing a chicken. And they were debating whether it was a guinea hen or a chicken. No animosity. Very normal discussion. Paul's very happy. And we know that Paul, after that, is texting back and forth with the girl about going to the movies.
I mean, just because there's no animosity doesn't mean he didn't plan it, you know? Ooh, okay.
Nobody's down there threatening him. Daddy's not pulling out a shotgun and killing him. For, 10 minutes after that, he's texting this girl. So, big question. One shooter or two? Two guns, shotgun and an AR. And by the way, Maggie has no defensive wounds because she's running. What's she running from?
Oh, so when Paul was shot, Maggie heard it and Maggie ran away, and that's why she was shot in the back of the head, I guess.
And could you shoot? Typically, she had a little shed right, probably 150 feet from the feed room on the other side of the wall. Perhaps she heard the shotgun blast and came around and saw somebody, or two people, and whoever it was opened up. Was there enough time to kill Paul, and then find the AR, and then ambush Maggie? Much more likely there were two people, but again, we don't have to prove anything. Let me sort of share the framework in which you should examine this. You have agreed to follow the law, and here's the law. Here is the law. He didn't do it. He is presumed innocent. As you sit there right now, when you look at him, you have to believe he is innocent. He didn't do it. Now, let me tell you, that's so difficult to do. I get it. And the way maybe the best way to explain it is this morning or yesterday, nobody really reads newspapers anymore, but if you're reading the newspaper, looking at the internet, and you read the police had arrested somebody for some heinous crime, the natural inclination of everybody, all of y'all, is to say, thank God they caught him or her. Thank God that person is in custody.
Oh, we got real quick.
It's so natural. We all do it.
Wait, is he wearing a mic on the lapel or something?
Presumed the police had arrested the person that committed the crime. You presumed him or her guilty. That is the natural thing to do. And you know what? That's fine for you to do. Any other day except today. Because you took an oath to follow the law. And the law is, he is innocent. He's presumed innocent. That is your presumption. Your mental framework is, he didn't do it. They've got to prove.
Until all the evidence comes rolling in, you start having a lot of doubts.
Prove it to me beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, what's even more difficult, and this isn't a contest, this isn't a game, this isn't who wins and who loses. This is about justice. Oliver Wendell Holmes, one of the justices of the Supreme Court, once said, jury duty is the highest duty a citizen can perform for their country in peacetime. Because you are protecting us from them, from the state, from the government. That's the foundation of our Constitution, is that the individual has the right to be presumed innocent, has the right to a jury trial, has a right to have his or her peers in sitting judgment of it. That's you. And the framework is you presume him innocent, and you cannot convict him until the state proves to you beyond a reasonable doubt. of his guilt. And a reasonable doubt is the kind of doubt which would cause an ordinary person to hesitate to act in the more important
Someone in the law and crime chat said Paul was a liability. That's a very interesting way to look at it.
decisions in their life. Now, what makes this even more complicated is there's no direct evidence. There's no eyewitness. There's no camera. There's no fingerprints. There's no forensics tying him to the crime. None. None. I say that without any fear of contradiction whatsoever. None. And what the judge is going to tell you is, to the extent the state relies on circumstantial evidence, the circumstances must be consistent with each other, and when taken together, point conclusively to the guilt of the accused beyond a reasonable doubt. If these circumstances merely portray the defendant's behavior as suspicious, the proof has failed. Now, this smoke they've created is about suspicion. I mean, if you show up at the scene and you got the wife, and the wife especially dead, and the guy's got a shotgun, you know, it's pretty logical for the cops to jump to the conclusion he did it.
Okay, so let's say this. Let's say, I don't know, because it seems like Alex Murdaugh would have been on the property when the murders happened. How would he not hear the multiple gunshots, the multiple, gunshots from the shotgun, the AR style white rifle, whatever? Or like if he was like driving away from the property, wouldn't he still hear it? Isn't it really loud out there?
And the problem is that as they came to that conclusion, they have pounded that square peg in the round.
Like, how far is this kettle from the main
They've
house?
ignored some witnesses. For instance, that blue tarp showed up with a blue tarp.
Yeah, what's up with that? Blue tarp with the raincoat, and they said there was gun residue on the inside. Yeah, what's up with that?
That witness who said he showed up with the blue tarp
Okay.
was shown a blue rain jacket that he talked about. Said, that's not it. That's not what he brought here that morning.
Okay.
I talked to her. She says, no, it was a blue tarp. And what was it?
I object to him testifying, Your Honor. Objection sustained.
I would indicate.
Objection sustained. Emergency.
I would tell you that the testimony you're going to hear is inconsistent with the Attorney General's represented to you, based on interviews done by people other than me. So, what I'm telling you is this, that as you sit here and listen, every time there's a witness that takes that witness stand that the state's put up there, you see, you judge the credibility, whether to believe a witness or not believe a witness, whether to believe one witness against many, many against one. You're going to have to evaluate the testimony you hear from this witness stand with a critical eye. Critical eye. I mean, if you've got uncontested scientific evidence, you accept it. I've got no problem with that. These cell phone records he keeps talking about, I would say to you, are not necessarily accurate to the extent they're lying. I will also tell you that there's going to be a bunch of people, and I will have been promised something or threatened with something that may take the witness stand and say something. But I tell you what they're not going to say. They're not going to say they saw him kill him. They're not going to say that they were involved in it. They're not going to say anything that would give you a comfort level in their testimony. Now, all of you have indicated that you will follow the law. And I say this one last time. He didn't do it. He didn't butcher his son and wife. And you need to put from your mind any suggestion that he did. You've been picked because you said you could be fair. You were picked because you said you could follow the law. You were picked because Alex Murdaugh believes that you can be fair. Now, if during this process over the next however long we're here, I say something or do something, which most certainly based on my career I will do, that irritates you or angers you, sometimes I'm a little rough.
Okay.
Don't hold that against Alex. Hold it against me. If I say something that offends you in some way, don't hold that against Alex. Hold it against me.
So he a spicy lawyer.
Remember, as you sit there right now, in your mind, he didn't do it. He is innocent. He
I don't know, man. It don't look good for him, but okay.
would require a verdict of not guilty from you. That's the law. That's your oath.
That's the law.
Thank
He's
you.
not guilty. Interesting opening statement. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to send you to the jury room for a break while I discuss scheduling with everyone. Please do not discuss the case. As I mentioned to you earlier, you're not allowed to discuss the case at all until you've heard the entire case and you've heard the instructions of law. So please go to the jury room.
All right, what did you guys think about the defense opening? Clark says, death follows and surrounds this guy beyond coincidence.